Hi, fools. Thanks for joining us. We are joined by a special guest. This is Kratos Defense and Security CEO, Eric DeMarco. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So, you've been CEO of Kratos for, correct me if I'm wrong, a little over 20 years now. Um, so, how has the company evolved in that time? Give us kind of a snapshot of Kratos today versus when you started.
Yeah, when I started, I had come over from the Titan Corporation. I was the president, and that was back before there were IDIQ type contracts and low price acceptable contracts. And so being in the services space was the place you wanted to be a public company because of the predictability of winning recompetes every 5 years. So when we first started with Kratos, we had a vision of 50% products, higher margins, a little choppier, 50% services, win the recompetes every 5 years, very stable, a nice model for a public company. In '09, after President Obama came in, he changed some rules, which brought in low price, technically acceptable, commoditized services space. So we had to reset our strategy. So we set our strategy to become a pure technology and hardware company. And at that time, the war on terrorism was in full flux. And so there was the OCI budget, the Overseas Contingency Budget. So we decided to be contrarian, and we built a company not focused on asymmetric warfare, but on nation state warfare. And that's how we got into drones and hypersonics and satellites, things you didn't need at the time for necessarily asymmetric warfare against terrorists, but against nation state. And the pendulum has swung, and here we are.
All right, so we have, I don't know how familiar you are with the Motley Fool, but we've recommended Kratos in several Motley Fool services. But one of the biggest roadblock is has lately especially has been valuation. As you know, your stock's done well. I'm
Mhm.
not going to ask you to comment on your stock price because you'd probably be the first CEO who was ever willing to do that.
Right.
But so the point being that clearly investors see a massive opportunity here.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say just by your stock performance. So where do you see Kratos going over the next 5, 10 years? Just kind of broad strokes. We'll get into the specifics in a minute.
Yep. So here's what's happening, very simply stated. There's a generational recapitalization of strategic weapon systems happening right now to take on Russia and China. Okay, we have $1 trillion defense spend in 2026, including the base budget and about 120 billion from the reconciliation bill. In 1993 was the Last Supper. There were 55 primes. The consolidation began. Now there are five. There is a massive supply demand imbalance right now. And this is why the venture guys are all coming in with the new defense tech companies. They see it. There is an enormous demand for military hardware and software, but the supply of companies that are qualified to deliver it, that doesn't exist. And Kratos is one of only two or three mid-tier public companies left that's qualified to actually deliver military grade hardware and software. This is what is driving the momentum in the space right now from a growth standpoint and from a valuation standpoint. While all that is happening, the new administration has come in and they've basically said, we want to rebuild the industrial base. We don't want to give it all to the traditional primes. We want to peel some of it away and give it to new guys. And this is the perfect storm, if you will, that's happened. And it's going to be here for the foreseeable future as long as the Russian China nation state threat is there.
So I know you're a big thing, and you kind of mentioned this in what your first answer of the day. It was about how you create like affordable technology. I think affordability as a technology is how you've put it in the
Yep.
past. How do you balance that the drive to keep costs down? You know, with the Valkyrie, for example,
Yep.
with the need to expand margins and keep shareholders happy and reach profitability as you scale. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah. The the balances as we're growing, we are getting leverage off of all the fixed infrastructure costs. This is why our margins have started going up. They're going up another 100 basis points in 26. They're going to go up another 100 basis points in 27. It's because we're transitioning from a number of these development programs, like in the tactical drones. Now we're going into production on the Valkyrie, for example, with the Marine Corps. in the hypersonics. We were in development on the Aaronese hypersonic glider and the Zeus solid rocket motor stack. Now we're in full rate production on those. I can't get into quantities because it's classified. Our small jet engines. We developed a new family of small turbojets for drones and loitering munitions. Those are now transitioning from development to production, and we can get into the next generation small cruise missiles. So it was the plan that we sat down with our investors and we said we're going to have a significant investment period where we're going to get designed in on all of these platforms. Then we're going to go to production and margins will go up, and that's what's happening.
All right, so you mentioned the big government spending budget right now, and I wanted to kind of ask you a question about what Kratos is doing with AI right now, because that's a big advantage of yours, in my opinion.
Right.
Um,
You're right.
yeah. So this is the first year in fiscal 2026 where the Pentagon had a specific line item for autonomy. I think it's $13.4 billion is the figure that's in front of me, specifically allocated to investing in autonomy. I know that's a big focus of yours. So can you just kind of walk us through your AI strategy, how you're going to, capture more and more of that as time goes on?
Yep. So autonomy, AI, or augmented autonomy are the three terms we use here. Number one is obviously in our suite of drones. And this is both target drones and tactical drones. And the more autonomy there is, the more AI there is, the more drones we're selling. And that is a direct cause and effect as the technology, the AI technology becomes more mature. It's transitioning to more hardware sales, and we're seeing that right now. And as recently as last week, there was another article out relative to the U.S. Marine Corps and the MUX-TAC Air program and furthering autonomy flights individually and as a loyal wingman. In addition to that, another area we don't talk a lot about because most of the work is classified, it's our biggest business, it's our satellite communication area. And artificial intelligence is driving that part of our business relative to space domain awareness and having, my terms, a library of data that we have built over years, decades, and now we can look at things going on in space, and AI can compare it to what that library of historical things were, and it can make predictive analysis and tell us or our customer what something is doing up there. And so that is really expanding for us. So those are two that are at the forefront: our drones business and our space business, our satellite communication business, where AI has been a big benefit for us because of the hardware infrastructure we have installed already.
All right, so that's so far AI on the product side, but AI correct me if I'm wrong, it's not only transforming the products themselves, but how you make them, how you design them, and things
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
How is Kratos using AI internally in those ways to take their business into the next level?
Okay. So I'll give you three examples, and I'm not going to get into too many
Sure.
details. Number one, for security reasons, and number two, for competitive. The first one's in our hypersonic area. We went from white piece of paper to a flying hypersonic glide vehicle in 24 months for $15 million. All right. Digital engineering with AI elements played a big part in that. Okay. Number two, we went from a solid rocket motor stack, a Zeus 1 and Zeus 2, that were specifically designed to put something in the right place at hypersonic speed at the right time in 30 months, $24 million, first flight successful. Here again, digital engineering using significant artificial intelligence elements. Next one, the small jet engines. And this is one I'm going to be even more vague on. We use significant artificial intelligence engineering tools and dynamics to help us on certain aspects of these engines. So we are using them in those three areas directly relative to products. We're designing faster, less costly, and we're designing them to be mass produced at an affordable cost.
Appreciate those details, even though I know a lot of your business is classified. I anticipated that in some of these questions. But so you've described it, and I think you already kind of mentioned this a little bit, that we're kind of at the beginning of multi-year, evolution of how we secure ourselves. If you look out 5, 10 years, what do you see as kind of how is the Department of Defense different than it is today, and how does that take Kratos' business for the next decade?
Yep. So in my opinion, the next 5 or 10 years, there are still going to be exquisites, but there are going to be less exquisites because they're so costly. So there are going to be exquisite sixth generation fighters. There are going to be exquisite sixth generation bombers, the B-21. I can go on and on, but they're extremely capable, but they're very, very expensive. They are going to be augmented by quantities. Quantity has a quality all of its own. Quantities of very capable autonomous or AI driven systems that by definition means they need to be very, very low cost. So you're going to see it's happening now, a big bifurcation. There are going to be expendables, disposables. There are going to be some attritables in the middle, and there are going to be some exquisites on the top. And you're going to see this from unmanned air, unmanned ground, unmanned sea, unmanned underneath, up in space, the space domain and the dogfighting that's happening up there. It's going to be more and more quantities that are I'm making this up, 90% the capability of the exquisite, but orders of magnitude less costly, so you can have affordable mass.
All right. Now, I wanted to talk a little, as specific as I'm allowed to get, about the future of your drone business. So you're developing your fifth generation jet drone right now. I think the first flight's anticipated this year, if I'm correct. So how is that different from the Valkyrie, and what area of the market is that intended for?
Yeah. So just to be very clear, so the Valkyrie is a quote unquote fifth generation aircraft. So
Okay.
the Valkyrie has been flying since 2019. It's routinely flying with the F-35s, the F-22s, fifth generation aircraft. And this is the one where we just recently, with our partner Northrop Grumman, were awarded competitively. We won the MUX TAC Air U.S. Marine Corps CCA program. We have some new ones coming that are beyond sixth generation. We'll just leave. We'll say it at that. That we are self-funding, and that we're hoping to fly in the very near future. These are all self-funded. We're doing it ourselves. So by definition, because we're funding it, it's lower cost. We move faster because it's our money. It's not other people's money. And by the end of this year, hopefully, we're going to be able to announce the first successful flight of the new guy.
Right. And yeah, you just kind of brought up something that these are self-funded. That they're for a lot of your products, you've used third-party suppliers for certain components. How much do you want to do in-house compared to what you currently do in-house, and like how different are the economics between going through third-party suppliers for certain components and not?
Yep. So vertical integration is it's a very important and relevant strategic discussion in Kratos. What's the most important part in a system? The part you don't have. So that would drive a company wanting to vertically integrate as much as possible. Now, that can bring surety because you're doing it yourself, but it can bring a level of higher cost because you're not leveraging the ability of other people to buy that to drive it down. Let me give you a big example of that, and then I'll go back to answer your question. So one of Kratos' businesses, we are the go-to hardware provider to virtually every prime for virtually every missile and radar system there is. So we build a significant amount of the hardware for Raytheon for Patriot. We build a significant amount of the hardware for Lockheed Martin for long-range hypersonic weapon. We build a significant amount of the hardware for Northrop Grumman for integrated battle command system. I can keep going. Why do they do that with us? They know we're not going to compete with them, and because they can lever off of our infrastructure, our tooling, etc., it drives the cost down to all of them. That's the same type of thought in your thinking and your question for engines, for example. Okay. So for our small turbojet engines, if we go to an aerospace casting guy or a milling guy or a tooling guy, and we say we need 500 of these for a 500 jet engine run, they're going to say to us, that's nice, but Pratt and Whitney for F-35 is buying 5,000 of them, so you're not the priority. In those type of instances, we call those kryptonite parts in Kratos, we are vertically integrating. So we are vertically integrating where we know we won't be the priority. It's a mission critical part. It's got to be on time, and obviously it has to work. And we're vertically integrating those. In other areas where we're not vertically integrating, we are going to what I'll say are non-traditional manufacturers. So I'll give you one example. The automotive industry is helping us with certain very precise and precision castings and dies and milling on certain of our products where they find it very interesting work. And we're actually one of the bigger dogs in the aerospace industry to them as a customer.
Sure. And you just mentioned engines. And tell me if I got these numbers wrong. The new engine facility at Auburn Hills, I believe, is what it is. It's designed to eventually produce 50,000. Am I reading that right? Spartan engines per year. That seems like a staggering number.
That's right.
Who are all those going to be for? Because are they all internally? Or are they going to be the some of the customers you just mentioned?
Right. So that's exactly right. It's qualified with the government for 50,000 engines a year. And these engines, these are small turbojets. So think 30, 40, $50,000 per engine. As you probably are aware, there is a whole new class of low cost cruise missiles coming. So take a look at ETV, Franklin, Mace, Barracuda of Anduril. Let me give you some ones that are public that we're on. Take a look at Lockheed Martin Carrera, Lockheed Martin Speed Racer, Lockheed Martin CMMT. You can take a look at Boeing powered JDAM. That's our engine. Northrop Grumman, we're on a number of theirs. There are literally going to be tens of thousands of small jet-powered drones and loitering munitions, primarily for the Pacific. So just think about the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Those drones are quadcopters, class 1, 2, and 3. They can go 30, 40 miles. Well, it's the same thesis, but in the Pacific, you have the tyranny of distance. You got to go hundreds, if not thousands of miles. How do you do that? It's with jets. How do you afford it? Low cost. So the customers are going to be some of the ones I mentioned, plus many others that we're under NDA we can't talk about. And these are being deployed right now. It's just not a lot of it's public.
All right, fair enough. So I wanted to mention kind of one of the biggest risk factors that people bring up every time I pitch Kratos in one of our services.
Yeah.
That the political environment seems conducive to your business now. You mentioned the highest DoD budget in a long time. There's money specifically carved out for UAVs, for hypersonic systems, things like that. How dependent is Kratos? I know you mentioned that you're very international, but how dependent are you on the political environment for continuing to keep your order book growing?
Yep. I'd say that we are dependent on the geopolitical environment. So as long as global peace doesn't break out, for the reasons I said to you, Russia, China, to a less extent, North Korea and Iran, these are nation states that are very, very capable. And I mentioned let's say defense budgets. I don't believe this is true. Let's say they don't grow significantly over the next several years, or there's an administration change. Quantities are going to matter, which means affordability is going to matter. And what Kratos is you said it up front. We have many Kratos taglines. Affordability is a technology. What Kratos, our expertise, is delivering 85 or 90% of a envisioned requirement of someday. We'll deliver it right now for 1/5 of the cost. And I don't care what administration it is, they're going to want to get more bang for their buck. I could argue with you that a different party administration than currently is going to want that more than the current one. And so And then we go back to the supply demand equation, scarcity valve. There's only one Kratos. I defy anybody to name any public company or venture backed company that's anywhere near the capabilities that we have. That is going to be valuable irrespective of the administration.
Right, and another kind of geopolitical question. Let's say that tensions between the U.S. and China or the U.S. and Russia resulted in some sort of weapons bans or arms control or things like that, which has been talked about many times.
Right.
How exposed would Kratos be?
Right. Two things. Let me answer that question in the reverse. First of all, take a look at what just happened to the MTCR. So the Missile Technology Control Regime. Take a look at what Rubio just did with that. It's on the website. They completely loosened that up. This is what's driving Kratos's drone sales and other sales internationally right now. So the pendulum is going the other way. Okay. Now, if there were arms control, so I can't think of an area that could possibly happen other than START just went away. So if START came back, the START treaty, the nuclear treaty, which I don't believe is coming back because the Chinese say they don't want anything to do with it. They want to continue to arm for the teeth. So if it was a nuclear system, we're involved with Sentinel. We do the ground equipment on that. So if global peace broke out or there was a ban on nuclear weapons, maybe that would impact us somewhere there. But we're incredibly well diversified. Don't quote me on this, but I don't think any program or contract we have is greater than 1 or 2% of what we do. So I don't think it would be an issue if something like that were to happen.
Okay. So far we've talked about your UAV business, your hypersonics business. You mentioned the satellite communications, and I have a feeling that might be the answer to this question. But if you were to pick one program or area of your business that you think is underappreciated right now in terms of maybe its future potential or the value to Kratos as a whole, what would it be?
The number one is the hypersonic business. I don't
Okay.
think people appreciate this. Let me give you some data. So in 2025, our hypersonic franchise did roughly 200 million in revenue. In 2026, it's going to do 400 million in revenue. In 2027, it's going to get near 800 million in revenue. This is just our hypersonic franchise. All right. And then it's going to leapfrog again the year after that. We are, as far as I know, the only company in the United States that is routinely flying hypersonic systems. Kratos. Okay. We developed a solid rocket motor stack, Zeus, specifically to put these things in the right place at the right time at the right speed, as I mentioned before. That's extremely low cost. I think all in one of our hypersonic launches, including the glide vehicle, is $10 million. So the demand for test systems and tactical systems is incredible because of where computing technology is going. Stealth in certain aspects may not be what it used to be. What's the new stealth? Hypersonic. Kratos is the industry leader in hypersonics. I don't think people appreciate that, and I don't think people appreciate. Again, take a look at some of the venture-backed companies that are trying to get into this game. You take a look at a relative basis. Our hypersonic franchise is probably worth $5 or $6 billion by itself.
All right. So speaking of hypersonics and how fast everything's growing and things like that, you've been investing significantly in building out new facilities. We already talked about Auburn Hills, the engine facility. I think there's another one in Maryland, in Alabama, in Vancouver. I'm sure I missed one or two. So how? First of all, what's the kind of general stage of the build outs of those? When are they expected to be online and things like that? And when how do you see them in terms of the economics of eventually generating higher returns from them?
Yep. And I'll go through a list of them in a minute. Every one of our facilities that we're building out, we have a customer with a specific product or system, or a partner with the specific product or system with a funding stream. This is critically important what you're asking here. We do not build any facility and hope they will come. When you read about companies saying we're going to build a cajillion square foot facility and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing someday, I don't know how you do that because you've got to custom build a facility for the most efficient production of that system or hardware, and probably most importantly, security requirements. You have to have a customer certify security requirements. It's basically their facility, so they've got to sign off on that. So Auburn Hills is up and running. We're producing jet engines there. Okay. The hypersonic integration facility in Maryland is up and running. We are doing integration of hypersonic and other rocket systems there. Okay. In Indiana, we have a larger hypersonic integration facility specifically for the Mach TB hypersonic program we won. That one will be coming online later this year. Okay. In Indiana, our program Anaconda, which is an anechoic chamber for SPY-6 radars, is underway. That'll be online next year. And again, every one of these, customer, I'm mentioning the products. Helios, a specific arc jet laser chamber for hypersonic system testing in Indiana, will be online a year after next. Prometheus, with our partnership with Rafael for solid rocket motors and energetics, explosives in Indiana, will be online 2027. I can keep going, but every one of these, again, customer, hardware, funding stream, so we can put together a financial model so we know there will be an adequate or acceptable rate of return for our investors who gave us the capital to make these investments.
All right, I just have a couple more. So these are all kind of toward the future. So Kratos, I was reading a ranking. You were number 91 in defense spending last year, as far as the companies that the Department of Defense and related parties spent money on. So where do you think you could get to it about in the next 5 to 10 years? And what's the path to becoming a much larger, part of part of our defense budget than you are today? What's the big path? You mentioned hypersonics, but
Right. Yeah. I don't like have a target like we want to go from 91. I didn't even know we were 91 to whatever. However, there's no question we are going to rapidly and acceleratingly move up that list. Let me tell you why. Okay. All right. Number one, we're growing, organically 20% a year. I think we guided for 27 to actually do somewhere around 23% a year organically. So right now, opportunities is not an issue with Kratos. We have more opportunities than most companies would dream about. Number two, you asked about artificial intelligence before. Well, the services companies. So think of, this is no disrespect to anybody, the butts and seats. The services companies' percentage of the defense budget is going to be going down, and significantly. So a large number of those guys that are in front of us that are services company or services based, especially under this administration, those are going to be flipping around and going the other way. All right. Next, in my opinion, this administration of the Department of War, as we talked about up front, they need to rebuild the industrial base. So they're going to make a conscious effort where there are qualified and capable companies other than the traditionals to give them a shot. So our growth trajectory is up and to the right. And I see us moving down or up, whichever way you want to look at it, that list of being an integral part of U.S. national security for the foreseeable future.
excellent. So before we wrap up, I just kind of wanted to give you the last word for anything I might have missed that you would love investors to know about what's going on in Kratos. We already touched on a lot. We touched on AI. We touched on hypersonics. We touched on the UAVs. We touched on the satellite systems. Is there anything else that you think investors should be aware of when it comes to Kratos?
The way I'd like to close this out is building military grade hardware and software that must work every time is hard. This doesn't happen overnight. Kratos, we were, for all practical purposes, created in 2008. And you are not going to see us stray much, if at all, beyond what we're currently doing. You can only be the best at a certain number of things. And Matt, as you said, I believe, and I'm the CEO, I drink the Kool-Aid, We are the best in high performance jet drones. We are undoubtedly the best in hypersonic systems. We are the best in small jet engines for jet drones and missiles. We are by far the industry leader in software defined command and control and telemetry tracking and control systems for satellites. I don't think anyone else is even close to us in the satellite communication area. Our satellite business is a crowned jewel. And so we have the right technology, the right products at the right price to support the Department of War and rebuild the U.S. industrial base. And that's how I'd like to end it.
All right. Well, there you have it. Eric DeMarco, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else did too. And thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.